My name is Sarah Harper. I'm 35 years old. And this is the story of how my own sister used me, erased me from her life, and expected me to smile through it, until I made sure the whole illusion she built came crashing down. I run a small cafe and patisserie in Charlotte, North Carolina. It's not trendy or Instagram famous, but it's mine. A space filled with buttercream, laughter, and the kind of love that rises at dawn with the scent of fresh croissants. I've spent the past 9 years waking up before the city even blinks, building a life one loaf, one latte, one customer at a time. People think small business owners live the dream, but that dream is often baked with blisters, bills, and betrayal. And betrayal, as I found out, often comes from the people you think would never hurt you. It was a regular Thursday. I'd just finished packing up an order for a bridal shower, mini lemon tarts and 24 rosewater macarons. I sat at my office nook in the back, sipping on chamomile tea, scrolling mindlessly through my phone during a rare 5-minute break. I wasn't looking for anything. I certainly wasn't expecting to be punched in the chest by pixels. But there it was. A Facebook post from my younger sister, Olivia. A photo of an ivory and gold wedding invitation, delicate script, glossy cardstock, elegant border. Olivia and Trent. March 25th, can't wait to share this day with our most cherished loved ones, the caption read. Cherished loved ones. My throat tightened. I stared at it, heart stuttering. There was no invitation in my mailbox. No email. No call. No text. And yet, I had paid the $3,000 deposit for the very venue printed on that card. Just weeks ago, Olivia had cried on my cafe's kitchen floor, saying she and Trent were strapped for cash and that the ballroom of their dreams was slipping through their fingers. I didn't even blink. I wired the deposit the same day. Then came the catering dilemma, $1,800 short. Covered. The dress? A Vera Wang knockoff Olivia claimed looked designer but felt like heaven. She asked if I could help. Just a little, she said. It would mean so much. I transferred $2,000 without hesitation. And when our parents hesitated to cover the cost of photography, I stepped in with another $2,500. I never asked to be repaid. I did it because she was my sister. Because family, I believed, meant showing up, especially when it matters most. I blinked hard. Surely, it was an oversight. A mistake. Maybe the invites were staggered. Maybe mine was on its way. I texted her, my fingers trembling slightly but my words light. Hey Liv. Just saw your invite on Facebook. Can't wait. Did mine get lost in the mail? I hit send. My tea sat untouched. Hours passed. No reply. Not even a seen notification. I buried myself in cupcake orders. A part of me hoped she'd call, laugh it off, and blame USPS. But my phone remained silent until 9:14 p.m. One line. Sarah, I hope you understand. We're keeping it small and elegant. Just really tight-knit. Still love you. Please be happy for us. I didn't cry. I didn't throw my phone. I just stood there, inside my own bakery, under the warm lights that had seen me through my darkest nights, and realized, my sister didn't see me as part of her future. Not even a seat at the table I had paid to build. And for what? Because I didn't wear the right clothes? Because my job didn't come with corporate titles or cocktail parties. I wasn't enough for her curated life. But my money? That was welcome. I closed the bakery early that night. Walked home beneath the Carolina moonlight, each step heavier than the last. I couldn't stop hearing her words, tight-knit. Like I wasn't flesh of her flesh. Like being the woman who made her first birthday cake and braided her hair for prom somehow didn't qualify. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, memories playing like reruns. Olivia giggling as she stole cookie dough from my mixing bowl. Olivia clapping when I opened the cafe. Olivia weeping into my shoulder when she thought Trent was cheating, and me, holding her until she fell asleep on my couch. And now she had no space for me in the elegant, tight-knit gathering? I showed up to the cafe early the next day. No orders due. I turned on the ovens anyway. Kneading dough steadied my hands. Watching pastries rise steadied my rage. I wasn't going to fight. I wasn't going to beg. But I was done being used. I drove to our parents' house that afternoon, unannounced. Walked through the back like I always did. The kitchen smelled like rosemary chicken and lavender candles, the scent of a home that never asked what I was going through unless it impacted them. And then I heard Olivia's voice. She's just not really a match for the vibe. You know, she said, laughing lightly. I love her. But imagine her showing up in one of those frosting-dusted aprons? What would Trent's boss think? My mother hummed uncertainly. She means well. She means well, Olivia echoed. But I need this day to feel refined. Sarah doesn't blend. I stepped into the room without a sound. Olivia's back was to me. I heard you, Liv, I said. They both froze. I don't blend. I'm not refined. But my bank account fit just fine with your wedding bills, didn't it? Olivia turned, mouth parting in a nervous smile. Sarah, I didn't mean. You never do, I interrupted. My parents stayed silent. Cowardly silence. Like always. I looked at them, then back at her. Don't worry. You won't have to worry about me ruining the vibe. I'm done funding a fairy tale I'm not invited to. And I walked out. That was the beginning. But it wasn't the end. Because Olivia thought the damage was done. She had no idea that I wasn't just walking away from her wedding. I was letting it all fall apart. When I left my parents' house that day, I wasn't angry anymore. I was clear. It was the first time I'd stood up and looked each of them in the eye, Olivia with her curated elegance, my mom with her quiet compliance, my dad with his familiar, useless silence, and said without saying, I see you now. All of you. The days that followed felt like an odd calm after a years-long storm. No explosive fights. No dramatic phone calls. Just quiet. I returned to my bakery like nothing had changed, except everything had. I started every morning at 4:15 a.m. sharp. Mixed cinnamon into the sourdough, kneaded raspberry filling into croissants, boxed up early deliveries. But even as I worked, I knew something was brewing. Not in my ovens, in them. 3 days after that kitchen confrontation, I got the first message from Olivia. Hey, could you confirm if the final payment for the venue has gone through? They said they were waiting on the last $1,800. Just wanted to double-check. I stared at the screen. No apology. No acknowledgement. No mention of what I had heard or said. Just a nudge. Like I was her assistant. Like nothing had happened. I didn't reply. Instead, I went downstairs to the walk-in freezer and counted inventory until my fingers felt like ice. I needed that numbness to override the fury rising in my chest. That night, she called. I let it ring. She called again. I turned off the ringer. By Friday, Mom texted. Sarah, please don't make things difficult. You committed to helping. Backing out now could ruin everything. That word again. Committed. Like I'd signed a contract. Like I was some kind of financial guarantor instead of a sister. I didn't answer her either. I knew what they were trying to do, drown me in guilt. Remind me of promises I made back when I thought I was loved, when I thought being generous was the same as being valued. But this time, they were too late. Saturday morning, I woke to 11 missed calls. By Sunday, Dad finally texted, his first direct message to me in months. Sarah, let's not turn this into a family war. Just do what's right. We'll talk after. Do what's right. I laughed. In all those years, he never said that when Olivia cut me off from family photos, skipped my birthday, or mocked my little cupcake shop in front of her friends. But now that her wedding was on the line, now he had something to say. It was remarkable how quickly they all forgot that I was the one who fronted every emergency bill. Who never asked for a receipt, let alone gratitude. I was the quiet fixer. The fallback. The financial fairy with a whisk and a bleeding heart. Not anymore. That afternoon, I canceled the payment scheduled for the venue's remaining balance. It was set up on an auto transfer Olivia didn't know about, a formality, just in case there were late penalties. I deleted it in 3 taps. The second I hit cancel, my hand stopped shaking. Later that night, I stood in my apartment above the bakery, frosting a sample cake for a regular client's rehearsal dinner. Classic vanilla bean sponge, soft white petals on a pale blue background. I worked in silence, then turned off the lights and stared at the cake in the dark. It was beautiful. No crowd. No spotlight. Just honest work and peace. The next morning, a new text from Olivia popped up. Sarah, please respond. I know you're mad, but this is getting ridiculous. Can we just be civil? Civil. They wanted me to be civil. After treating me like the help. Like a prop in their curated fantasy. Like someone who didn't deserve a seat at the table she paid to build. They had no idea that this was me being civil. The week before the wedding, my mom came to the bakery. I didn't expect it. I was prepping dough when I heard the bell above the front door chime. She stood there in her beige coat and soft gray scarf like she hadn't been complicit in the exclusion. I need to talk, she said. I wiped my hands and gestured to a stool near the counter. She sat, slowly, like it pained her to be there. Olivia is spiraling, she began. The venue called, said if the final balance isn't paid by Wednesday, they'll cancel. I said nothing. The florist hasn't been paid either, she added. And the baker, the one for the groom's cake, just pulled out. I folded a cloth over my palms and leaned against the counter. So what do you want from me? I asked calmly. She paused. I think, maybe you could help. One last time. I shook my head slowly. I'm not a one last time person anymore. But Sarah, she started, her voice cracking. It's Olivia's big day. No, I said, voice still level. It was my big day too, when I showed up for her. When I gave everything and was told I didn't belong. When my apron and buttercream-stained hands weren't good enough for her filtered world. Mom flinched. She didn't mean. She did, I cut in. She meant every word. I heard her. You heard her. And you all stayed quiet. She blinked hard, like she might cry, but I was past softening. I wasn't being cruel. I was just finally done pretending they didn't hurt me. I won't pay another $1, I finished. And if that means Olivia learns a very expensive lesson about respect, then so be it. Mom stood slowly, nodding once like a defeated politician leaving a failed negotiation. She'll never forgive you, she warned. I smiled faintly. She doesn't have to. But she'll remember this the next time she thinks family is just another transaction. She walked out. And that's when I knew, the cracks in Olivia's wedding weren't just about money. They were about the lie she built on borrowed kindness. And I was done being the foundation she walked on. The days leading up to Olivia's wedding unraveled faster than a loose hem on a cheap dress. Monday morning, I unlocked the bakery at 6 a.m., expecting silence. Instead, my phone exploded with new notifications the second I turned it on. Missed calls. Voicemails. Texts. Not just from Olivia or my parents this time, but from extended family, even friends I hadn't spoken to in months. Apparently, the news was out. The venue had issued a final warning. Without full payment by noon Wednesday, the booking would be forfeited. My mom's voice cracked on a voicemail that ended with, "If the wedding doesn't happen, everyone will blame you. You know that, right?" And that's when I knew they weren't asking for help anymore, they were shifting blame. It wasn't about fixing anything. It was about keeping their image intact. They needed a scapegoat in case the picture-perfect wedding dissolved in public humiliation. And they'd chosen me. I didn't reply. I kept my apron tied and my head down. The smell of cinnamon rolls baking was more grounding than any apology would have been, not that I expected one. But something shifted around 10:30 a.m., when I got a message that made me pause. It was from Maddie, our cousin, one of the bridesmaids. "Sarah, I heard what's happening. This is insane. Just so you know, not everyone is siding with Olivia. She told everyone you backed out of spite." "I'm sorry." Spite? That was rich. For a split second, I considered clearing my name. Posting receipts. Telling everyone what Olivia had said, what I'd overheard, what I'd contributed. But then I stopped. Because I realized something. When people need to be convinced of your worth, they were never really in your corner to begin with. I put my phone away. That night, as I was locking up the bakery, I noticed something taped to the door, a printed photo of Olivia and Trent, smiling, holding a save the date sign. On the back, scribbled in blue pen. "Family is everything. Don't let bitterness win." Anonymous. Bitterness. They really didn't see the difference between boundaries and bitterness. They thought saying no, finally, for once, was an act of vengeance. But it wasn't. It was self-respect. The next day, my father showed up. Not with fanfare or fury, just with his old baseball cap in his hand, worn and quiet like he always was. "Can we talk?" he asked. I didn't stop him. We sat in the back of the bakery on milk crates, near the flour bins. He looked at the shelves of freshly baked brioche, the orderly trays of eclairs. For a moment, I thought maybe he was going to compliment something. But instead, he said, "You know your sister's never been good with money." I looked at him. "You're here to talk about finances?" "No," he said quickly. "I'm here because your mother's worried. And Olivia's stressed. People are calling us, asking what's happening." I nodded. "They should ask her." He looked down. "You could fix this." "I already did," I said. He blinked. "How?" "I stopped enabling her," I replied. "And that might be the first real help I've given her." He didn't speak for a long time. When he finally stood to leave, he didn't say goodbye. Just shuffled out with the same hesitance he brought in. And I realized something else. Silence isn't always neutrality. Sometimes it's cowardice dressed as peace. By Wednesday morning, the deadline came and went. At 1:42 p.m., Maddie texted again. "Venue cancelled. They've locked the gates. No exceptions. Olivia's freaking out. No backup plan." I stared at the screen, then went right back to slicing strawberry tartlets. I didn't smile. I didn't smirk. There was no joy in watching someone's big day collapse, but there was peace. Because I hadn't sabotaged anything. I'd simply stopped holding up a structure that had never included me. At 4:05 p.m., Olivia called again. I picked up. I was tired of hiding. Her voice was ragged. "Are you happy now?" she snapped. "Everything's ruined." I said nothing. "This could have all been avoided if you just kept your word," she continued, her voice trembling. "You said you'd help." "And I did," I replied calmly. "Until you decided I wasn't good enough to be there." "Sarah, you're blowing this up. The wedding cake and venue deposit were just small parts of a big picture." "No," I corrected. "They were the foundation of the picture. And I built them for you, with time, money, and trust." You erased me like I was a smudge on your perfect frame. Silence. I could hear her breathing, like she was about to cry. You know I didn't mean to hurt you, she whispered. I let that hang for a second. No, Lave. I don't know that. Because if you did, you would have picked up the phone a long time ago. Before this all crumbled. She sniffled. So what now? I exhaled, feeling the exhaustion settle in my shoulders. Now, you figure it out. Without me. Like you wanted. I hung up. And this time, I didn't feel guilty. Because sometimes the only way people learn what you truly meant to them is when they're forced to stand without you. The wedding didn't get cancelled. Not completely. Trent's family pulled strings last minute. A friend with a big backyard offered space. The food was scaled down. The DJ didn't show. The cake was a sad sheet cake from a local grocery store. Guests complained about the disorganization. The weather turned halfway through. And Olivia? She never smiled once, according to Maddie. She spent the evening walking around like a ghost in lace, looking for something that didn't show up. But she was looking in the wrong place. I wasn't missing. I just wasn't willing to be used anymore. On the morning of the wedding, I woke up at 6 a.m. sharp. Not because I was going, I had never been formally invited, and now it was laughably clear I wouldn't be missed. But because I had a cake order to fill. A 3-tier lemon poppy seed with honey cream frosting for one of my oldest clients, a retired schoolteacher celebrating her 50th anniversary. While Olivia was scrambling in a borrowed backyard with a sheet cake and folding chairs, I was piping golden flowers onto a masterpiece. The contrast wasn't lost on me. And yet, I felt no vindication. Just clarity. The day unfolded slowly, peacefully. I reorganized the pastry shelf. Replenished the almond flour. Taught Jamal, my new assistant, how to temper chocolate. The bakery buzzed with the warm rhythm of a life I had built with blistered hands and unwavering resolve. Around noon, my phone buzzed again. It was Maddie. They just kicked everyone out of the original venue. Staff locked the doors in front of the guests. Olivia nearly fainted. I read it twice. My hands were covered in powdered sugar, but I wiped them clean and sat down. Not because I was shocked, I wasn't. But because it was the first time I truly realized what that meant. It was over. The illusion. The facade. The fairy tale they built on my back. Olivia's perfect day had collapsed, not because of me, but because it was never real. Just a staged production starring her ego, with borrowed money, rented status, and no foundation. I didn't reply to Maddie. I didn't need to. At 12:18 p.m., Olivia called me again. This time, I answered. Her voice was barely controlled, a blend of tears and venom. You must be thrilled right now, she said. You won. You ruined my wedding. I looked out the bakery window, where the golden autumn sun bathed the sidewalk in warmth. You've got it wrong, Liv, I said, my voice flat. I didn't ruin anything. She let out a bitter laugh. If you'd just kept your word. You mean if I'd kept paying after being deliberately excluded? I cut in. Silence. I wasn't invited to the wedding, I continued. But you wanted me to fund it like I was part of it. She sniffled. You know I didn't mean it like that. No, I replied. I don't know anything anymore. Except that you didn't think twice before cutting me out. You only remembered me when the bill came due. That's not fair. Neither was this. I heard her breath catch. Then, do you really hate me that much? No, I said quietly. But I finally love myself enough to stop being treated like a wallet in an apron. She said nothing. And I didn't wait for more. I hung up and turned off the ringer. For the rest of the day, I stayed in the kitchen, focused on the joy of the anniversary cake. I added extra sugared violets to the top and tied the delivery box with a silk ribbon. When the husband came to pick it up, his eyes welled up just seeing the design. 50 years, he said softly. And I still don't know how I got so lucky. I smiled, handing him the cake. You showed up for her, I said. That's how. Later that night, while cleaning up, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was from a number I didn't have saved. But I knew who it was. Trent. I know things got messy. But for what it's worth, I'm sorry for how Olivia handled everything. I never agreed with cutting you out. I stared at the screen. That message meant more than anything Olivia had said. But still, it was too late. They made their choices. They wanted perfection without the person who built it for them. And now they had to live with a patchwork version stitched together at the last minute. By Sunday, the photos started trickling onto social media. Nothing like the Pinterest board Olivia had obsessed over for months. No grand staircase. No designer cake. No string quartet. Just plastic chairs, a wrinkled tablecloth, and a forced smile. The comments were polite. The captions vague. And Olivia, once a picture of manicured grace, now looked like she was barely holding herself together. I didn't comment. I didn't react. I just muted her account and went back to making lavender shortbread. 2 days later, I got a text. From Olivia. Do you have time for coffee this afternoon? I want to talk. No exclamation mark. No blame. But no apology either. Still, I agreed. We met at Sparrow's Nest, a quiet cafe tucked away from the buzz. I chose it on purpose. Neutral territory. No drama. Just public enough to keep things calm. I arrived right at 4 o'clock. She was already there, wrapped in a beige coat, latte clutched between nervous fingers. Hi, she said softly. Hey. I sat. We didn't speak for nearly a full minute. I know the wedding didn't go as planned, she said finally. Everything just spiraled. I nodded. I probably shouldn't have let it get that far, she added. Still, I said nothing. Then she dropped it, the real reason she asked me there. I was wondering, now that things have calmed down, if you'd be willing to help us cover some of the debt. I blinked. Not in surprise, but in awe of her audacity. If you invited me now, I repeated slowly, would I be allowed to pay again? No, I mean, I didn't mean it like that, she stammered. I raised my hand, stopping her. You had 6 months to treat me like family. You chose not to. And now that the music stopped, you're realizing who actually stood by you. You didn't just hurt me, Olivia. You erased me. Her cheeks flushed. I just wanted it to be perfect, she murmured. But you didn't want me in the picture, I replied, standing up. So now you can finish it without me. You're leaving? She asked, almost panicked. Yes, I said with a calm smile. But this time, it's not because you cut me out. It's because I finally chose to walk away. And I did. Not in anger. But in full peace, knowing I would never again pay for a place at a table where I wasn't wanted. It's strange how silence can be louder than any scream. After that final coffee with Olivia, everything went quiet. Not the uncomfortable, waiting for the next blow kind of silence, but the kind that settles into your bones and tells you you've finally left the storm behind. She didn't text again. Neither did my parents. There were no please think about it messages, no half-hearted apologies buried in new requests for help. For the first time in years, no one in my family needed something from me. And I realized that was the only time they ever reached out. When they needed. Not when I succeeded. Not when I cried myself to sleep on a flour-dusted pillow after working 14-hour shifts to keep my bakery alive. Not when I finally got featured in Charlotte Monthly or when I crossed my first $100,000 in annual revenue. Not once did they say, "I'm proud of you." But Olivia said, "You don't fit the vibe." And Mom said, "Sometimes lifestyles just don't align well." And I spent nearly $9,300 trying to be seen by people who never really looked. So I stopped looking for them, too. A few months passed. Autumn melted into early winter. The maple tree in front of the bakery shed its last crimson leaves, and I finally invested in a new industrial mixer, the one I'd dreamed of for years but always pushed to the bottom of the priority list because someone else needed help more. That someone else was no longer a factor. I began to realize how often I'd put my life on hold to cushion someone else's fall. Olivia's rent crisis. Mom's dental procedure. Dad's car repairs. Every time, it was just this once. Every time, they said thank you like it was a receipt, not gratitude. But when it came time to celebrate, to honor, to include, I was invisible. Not anymore. In January, I renovated the apartment above the bakery, the one I used to crash in when I pulled overnight shifts. I turned it into a real home. Hardwood floors. New lighting. A small reading nook with a velvet chair and a framed quote on the wall. If they wanted you there, you wouldn't have had to ask. It became my sanctuary. A space that was mine, untouched by obligation, decorated in warmth and boundary. Olivia never came by. She never returned the cake stand I lent her a year ago. Never said sorry. Not once. But she did post a new photo. A smiling selfie on Instagram, tagged #budgetbride #blessed #new beginnings. The backdrop? A dollar store garland and a string of fairy lights hanging in someone's backyard. The caption read, "Maybe it didn't go as planned, but it still ended with love. And that's all that matters." I didn't like it. I didn't comment. I just muted her and moved on. The day after Valentine's, I got a postcard in the bakery's mail slot. No envelope. No return address. Just 3 words written in tidy, familiar handwriting. "Proud of you." No signature. But I knew it was from my dad. He'd never said those words out loud, not once. But there they were, written quietly, slipped through the cracks, just like him. I placed the card on the bakery counter near the register, propped up between the biscotti jar and the tip tray. Not to show off. Just to remind myself, even silence changes shape when you stop chasing approval. A week later, I got an email from Charlotte Women in Small Business inviting me to speak on a panel. They wanted local success stories. Entrepreneurs who'd built something from nothing. My name had come up, apparently more than once. The irony wasn't lost on me. The sister who wasn't good enough for a curated wedding crowd was now being asked to speak to an audience of business leaders. I accepted. The event was held in a small theater with gold-trimmed velvet seats. The woman who introduced me called me a community staple, a woman of resilience, and a creative powerhouse. I felt the words ripple through me like balm on an old bruise. I spoke about risk, failure, success. But mostly, I spoke about value, and how sometimes, the people closest to you are the last to recognize it. After the panel, a woman approached me with teary eyes. "My daughter wants to open a bakery. I'm going to show her your shop." I smiled and handed her a free macaron box from the sample table. It was the kind of recognition that didn't ask for anything in return. The kind that feels like sunlight on cold skin. By spring, my bakery had a waitlist again. I'd hired a new assistant manager, and Jamal had started developing his own flavor line, a spicy chocolate ganache that customers couldn't get enough of. I was thriving. Not because I'd burned bridges, but because I'd finally stopped patching ones that led nowhere. My phone remained quiet on Olivia's birthday. No message from her. None from Mom. No surprise. But that night, after closing, I stood at the window of my apartment, sipping wine, looking down at the street below. The lamplight caught on the words painted across the bakery window, baked from the heart. And I thought about all the weddings I had saved. All the birthdays I had sweetened. All the strangers who saw more in me than my own family ever had. I had spent years thinking I had to earn love by giving until I disappeared. But I learned something far more important in the absence of their applause. I didn't need to be included to be enough. I didn't need to be invited to be valid. And I certainly didn't need to be refined to deserve respect. I just needed to love myself louder than their silence. By the time summer rolled in, Asheville had shed its chilly mornings for long, sun-warmed afternoons. The bakery's front door stayed propped open most days, letting in the scent of fresh-cut grass and the occasional gust of laughter from the sidewalk cafe crowd. Tourists wandered in for peach galettes and iced lavender tea, and the regulars stayed longer just to talk. Business was good. But more than that, I was good. For the first time in a long time, my peace wasn't fragile. It wasn't something I had to defend every day with gritted teeth or forced smiles. It was just mine. And it was real. I hadn't heard from Olivia in nearly 4 months. Until she showed up at my door. It was a Tuesday morning. Jamal was prepping almond croissants in the back, and I was stalking the glass display when I saw her through the window, standing just outside, hair tied back, arms crossed like she was cold, even though the sun was already high. I didn't move. She hesitated, then stepped inside, letting the bell over the door chime. "Hi," she said, her voice quieter than I remembered. "Hey," I replied, keeping my hands busy. "Croissants are still warm if you want one." She smiled faintly. "I'm not here for a pastry." I didn't respond. I didn't offer her a seat. She took a step closer, then stopped. "I owe you an apology," she said. "And before you say anything, I know it's late. I know I should have said it sooner." I didn't say a word. She looked around the shop, at the pendant lights, the handwritten chalkboard menus, the small bouquet of fresh tulips by the register. "This place is beautiful, Sarah. I mean it. It always was. I just didn't see it before." "You saw it," I said calmly. "You just didn't think it was worth much." Her lips parted, but she didn't argue. "I was embarrassed," she admitted. "Not by you, by myself. By how much I needed you. And I thought if I acted like I didn't, then maybe I could fake being someone better." "You thought a white dress in a fancy venue made you better," I said. "And I didn't fit the picture." "I was wrong," she said quickly, eyes flickering with guilt. "About so many things. About what matters. About who I hurt." I finally looked at her fully. "Then why are you here now?" She reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. Inside was a check. $9,300. "I can't undo what I did," she said. "But I can at least return what I took." I stared at the check for a long moment. My chest tightened, not because of the money, but because I hadn't realized how long I'd waited for this. Not the refund. The acknowledgement. The proof that she finally understood the cost. "I'm not asking for a reset," Olivia continued. "I know we're not going back to how things were. I want to do the right thing now. Even if it's late." I took the envelope and set it aside. "You're right," I said. "We're not going back. But this is a start." She nodded, tears gathering in her eyes. "I really am sorry, Sarah. You didn't deserve any of it." I didn't rush to comfort her. I didn't say, "It's okay," because it wasn't. But I did say the one thing that felt true. "I hope you've learned what love without respect really looks like." "I have," she whispered. There was a pause. She glanced toward the door, then back at me. "Can I come by again sometime? Just for coffee?" I nodded slowly. "Maybe one day." "Not yet." She smiled through her tears, then turned and walked out into the sunlight. The bell over the door jingled as it closed behind her, and just like that, the air felt different. Not lighter, not heavier. Just settled. Later that evening, I stood on the bakery's back patio with a glass of lemonade and watched the sky burn orange. I thought about all the things that had led me here. The nights I stayed up late baking for someone else's event. The mornings I woke up early to wire money I couldn't spare. The years I let guilt wear the crown where love should have sat. And I realized I wasn't angry anymore. Not because she paid me back, but because I no longer needed their love to feel whole. Their invitations. Their praise. Their seat at the table. None of it defined me. I had built my own table, with powdered sugar and calloused hands, and filled it with people who came not for what I could give, but because they loved me as I was. That night, Jamal finished his shift and said, "You okay, boss?" I smiled. Better than okay. He grinned. You ever think about expanding? This place deserves more eyes on it. I looked around at the warm lights, the polished countertops, the scuffed floors that had carried me through grief and glory. I don't need more eyes, I said. Just the right ones. He nodded like he understood, and he did. Because somewhere along the way, I'd stopped proving myself to the wrong people and started pouring everything into the life I actually wanted. And that life? It was rising perfectly, just like the first batch of bread on a quiet, golden morning. Autumn returned like an old friend, crisp air, red leaves curling at the edges, and a soft gold hue draped over every sidewalk in Asheville. The bakery smelled like cinnamon and brown butter most mornings, and customers wrapped in scarves lingered longer than usual just to breathe it all in. It had been almost a year since Olivia's wedding fell apart. A year since I took back my voice, my worth, and my peace. I didn't see her again after she returned the check. She never showed up for coffee. Never sent a follow-up message. And I didn't chase her either. We had said everything that needed to be said. The day she brought me that check, I didn't deposit it immediately. In fact, I left it untouched in my desk drawer for weeks. Not because I didn't need the money, I run a small business, every dollar counts. But because I needed time to let it mean something more than just numbers on a paper. It wasn't reimbursement. It was the closing chapter. And when I finally cashed it, I put every cent toward expanding my kitchen. New convection ovens. A larger work table. Better ventilation. I called it my clean-cut investment, a nod to the severed ties that had made room for something better. I didn't hear from my mom for 8 months. When she finally called, it was brief. Hi, sweetheart. I saw that article in the paper. The one about your bakery being voted best small business in Asheville. I just wanted to say, I'm proud of you. She didn't mention Olivia. Didn't bring up the wedding. Didn't ask for anything. I said thank you. It was enough. Sometimes silence is peace. But sometimes, peace is also hearing the one thing you always wanted to hear, without a string attached. As for my dad, he never called. But once, I found another postcard at the bakery, tucked into a box of winter oranges from our childhood neighbor. No name, just another 3-word message in his blocky handwriting. You did right. I kept that one too. It rests beside the first, propped against a tiny vase of dried lavender on my office shelf. They never apologized, not fully. But I learned that closure doesn't always come wrapped in perfect words. Sometimes it's in the space you claim when you stop asking for approval. One day, Olivia's name popped up on my social feed. She had rebranded herself, now a wedding consultant, of all things. Offering budget-friendly luxury tips and authentic planning for real-life brides. Her photos were softer now. Less filtered. More human. One image caught my eye, a small backyard wedding with mismatched chairs, homemade food, and a cake that was slightly lopsided. The caption read, "Sometimes imperfection tells a better story than perfection ever could." I didn't comment. I didn't like the post. But I did feel something unexpected. Hope. Maybe she'd grown. Maybe she hadn't. But that was her journey now, and mine no longer had to intersect. One brisk October afternoon, I stood behind the counter as Olivia's former college roommate walked in with her husband. I remembered her vaguely, a tall woman with impeccable style and a sharp tongue. She looked around, impressed. "Wow," she said. "This place is adorable. I always thought you were just the cake sister." I smiled as I handed her a sample of orange cardamom shortbread. "I'm the whole recipe now." She laughed, caught off guard. "Well, it smells better than any office I've ever worked in." Later that night, I was closing up when Jamal poked his head out from the back. "You good, boss?" he asked. I nodded, flipping the chairs onto tables. "Yeah," I said. "I'm finally where I'm supposed to be." He smiled. "We should put that on the wall." "Maybe we should. Because here's the truth, I didn't get my revenge by making Olivia suffer. I got it by reclaiming everything she made me feel I lacked. I stopped begging for invitations and built my own venue. I stopped offering discounts on my time, my love, my presence. I stopped letting family guilt me into silence. And I started showing up for myself. Every single day. That's the real revenge. The quiet kind. The kind where you don't need to shout or prove or destroy. You just rise. Unapologetically. Relentlessly. And when they turn to look, shocked by your strength, you simply smile and say, "I've been here all along. You just didn't see me." I don't bake for their approval anymore. I bake for joy. For art. For the woman I became in the fire they threw me into. My name is Sarah Harper. I'm 35 years old. And I used to think love without respect was still love. Now I know better. Now I demand both, or nothing at all. Some stories don't need a villain to end powerfully, just a woman who finally says, "Enough." Sarah's journey is a reminder, you are not selfish for setting boundaries. You are not cruel for saying no. And you are not obligated to fund your own erasure just to keep the peace. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away, and let it all fall apart. If this story struck a chord with you, share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to Revenge Echoes, where every story speaks louder than revenge.